My sister secretly decided to steal money from my credit card because I didn't want to pay for the wedding of her dreams. $28,400 taken from the card without my permission. When I told her after the wedding, at a family dinner, that my sister was a thief and I would call the police, my mother leaned over and called me ungrateful, as if I were 12 again and refusing to give up my allowance. "Don't make a scene," she whispered. "Your sister really wants this wedding. You should give everything to the family." My father didn't take his eyes off his glass. "Honey, this loan is on your shoulders. You'll pay it back faster than your sister." Across the room, my sister laughed into her new husband's shoulder. I was horrified by this injustice. I didn't want to hurt my parents' feelings, and I couldn't talk back to them. That wasn't how we did things. But the anger was in my throat, like a lump waiting to burst out. My voice was harsh and hurt, and I decided to speak up. "You used my card." "We used your help," Mom corrected, smoothing my sleeve as if I might wrinkle the evening. "You said you wanted to help." "I said I'd bring flowers from my garden," I said. "I said I'd bake cookies for the wedding ceremony." "I didn't say I'd buy you wedding cookies." My father sighed. "After everything we've done for you?" There it was, the old ledger, pulled out of his pocket like a magician's scarf, endless and suffocating. I felt the room shrink around me, my eyes skimming the surface of our family pond, curiously awaiting a splash. My sister's smile flickered. How could my parents decide that my wallet belonged to them and then call the theft love? I picked up my phone and stood. They didn't know I'd already locked the card at the first suspicious charge, that the florist's contract carried my sister's signature, not mine, that I'd saved the text where my mother wrote, "Just give me your numbers for the deposit. I'll return it Monday." They didn't know the venue manager and I had shared coffee that afternoon, and that she had promised to tell the truth if asked who authorized payment. They didn't know I was done being the quiet daughter who made problems disappear with a checkbook and a smile. "Let's step outside," I said softly. "We need to be clear about what you owe me." My mother's pearls stilled. My father finally looked at me. In the reflection of the table's silver urn, I saw a woman who had learned, finally, how to hold her ground. But to understand how a wedding became my line in the sand, I have to go back to the beginning. I'm 68 years old enough to have buried a husband, old enough to be called Nana by a girl with grass-stained knees and a laugh that lives in my ribs. My parents are 89 and 87, still sharp as thorns when they want to be. I have always been the dependable one. When my father's hip surgery bill swallowed his savings, I negotiated the payment plan. When my mother's car died in the grocery store parking lot, I wrote the check. When my younger sister, Lila, decided at 42 that she deserved the kind of wedding Pinterest promised 20-somethings, I offered to bring hydrangeas and cookies. I did not offer to fund a fairy tale. 2 weeks before the wedding, a charge for a tasting dinner appeared on my card. I thought it was a mistake. I called the hotel, explained the error, and the manager, a patient man named Victor with a voice like sand, apologized and reversed it. "The card came from a saved profile on the planning portal," he said. "Your mother entered it to hold dates months ago." Months ago. My hydrangeas were still asleep under frost when she typed my numbers. I froze the card. I changed passwords. I told my mother there had been some fraud and the bank had locked everything down. She tisked sympathetically, then asked if I could bring small bills for the tip jar at the bar on Saturday. That afternoon I drove to the venue to hand-deliver a check for the rehearsal dinner with Lila's name on it, not mine. Victor handed me copies of every invoice. He shook his head when I asked about authorization. "We require signatures," he said. "The ones on these are your sister's and your mother's." He tapped the contract. "Not yours." On the day itself, I sat through vows and speeches with a smile that felt stapled in place. My granddaughter, Mia, fell asleep against my shoulder during the first dance. I watched the lights turn her hair to copper and tried to remember every soft exhale. I thought of my late husband, Paul, and how he used to tuck a 20 into my pocket before a family event and say, "For your good mood." He was generous with humor and money, but deliberate too. He hated my parents' ledger. "Love is not a receipt," he'd say. Outside the ballroom, the night smelled of rain and cigarettes. My mother followed me onto the terrace, tugging her wrap tight. "Don't ruin Lila's night," she said. "I'm not ruining anything," I said. "I'm correcting it." My father stepped out behind her, the door hissing shut. He stood, silver hair immaculate, a man who believed in order so completely he ironed his socks. "We'll pay you back." "When?" "In time," he said, as if time were currency, and I should be grateful for the promise. "What you did is illegal," I said quietly. "You used my card. You signed my name in a system with my profile. You told the planner you had my blessing." "We are your parents," my mother said, as if that made us a single organism. "It's all the same bucket." "Then why does it always drain one way?" She blinked slowly, as if I'd spoken a dialect she didn't recognize. "This isn't you talking," she said. "It's that lawyer friend of yours. It's menopause. It's grief. You used to be generous." "I'm still generous," I said, "just not gullible." She took a breath to scold, and I lifted a hand. "Enough. Tomorrow, 11 a.m. My kitchen. Bring your checkbook. Lila and Matt should come too." "You can't schedule us like a dentist," my father said, offended. "I can schedule a meeting to discuss repayment," I said, "or I can schedule time at the police station. Your choice." His jaw worked. My mother's mouth tightened. I turned back toward the ballroom and for a moment watched the lights spin over the dance floor like a galaxy we were not part of. 11 the next morning, the hydrangeas in my yard were still blooming, fat and blue as summer. I set out coffee and lemon bars. Mia played on the rug with a farm set, making the plastic cow nod at the plastic pig like they were old friends. Lila arrived first. She stood in my doorway in yesterday's makeup and a white sweatsuit that made her look like a ghost of herself. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, pushing past me. "We were going to pay you back." "You signed the contracts," I said. "You knew whose card it was." "Mom said you offered." She bit into a lemon bar as if it had personally offended her. "She said you wanted to make it special." My parents came together, always a unit. My father carried a checkbook in a leather folder, which he placed on the table with ceremony. My mother put her purse down like she was disarming a bomb. "I made copies," I said, and slid the folder of invoices into the center of the table. "You will repay the full amount in writing with a schedule. Today, we will agree to terms. No handshakes, no promises. Written." My father opened the checkbook. "We can give you $5,000 today. And the rest? We'll manage it," he said, "over the next year." "No," I said, and my own voice surprised me with how steady it was. "Not vague. Not someday." I pushed a type form across the table. "This is a promissory note. It lists the principal, the interest, 1% per month to discourage delays, and the collateral." "Collateral?" my mother said, as if I'd asked for her pearls right off her neck. "The truck," I said, looking at my father. He loved that truck, a cherry red vintage Ford he drove to the coffee shop in the mornings like a badge. "If you default, I take the truck." My father's face went red to match the Ford. "Over my dead body." "Don't tempt me," I said, then softened because I didn't mean it. "I don't want your truck. I want my money, but I am done with airy promises." I glanced at Mia, who had lined up animals in a parade. "I have a granddaughter to think about." Lila scoffed. "You're making this dramatic." "You made it criminal," I answered. My mother clutched the edge of the table. "We raised you," she said. "We gave you everything." "You gave me life," I said. "Everything else I work for." We went in circles for an hour. My father haggled like a man at a flea market, shaving interest, adjusting dates. My mother sniffed, dabbed her eyes, sighed pointedly. Lila texted under the table. Finally, my father signed. My mother signed. Lila refused. "I'm not liable," she said. "I don't have it." "You are liable," I said. "You signed the contracts. You enjoyed the services. But fine, we'll start with them." I slid the notarization page across the table. "Harold is coming at noon to stamp this." "Who's Harold?" my mother asked. "Retired postmaster," I said, "and a notary. He'll be here in 20 minutes. "You planned this," my father said, accusatory and awed. "Yes," I said, "I plan to protect myself." Harold arrived at 12 on the dot, smelling faintly of pipe tobacco and mint. He checked IDs, peered at signatures through his readers, and pressed his stamp with the satisfaction of a man who believes in order. "There you go," he said, handing me the ink paper like a deed. That afternoon I took the note to my attorney, Mr. Klein, a soft-spoken man in his early 70s who had been Paul's chess opponent and tax preparer. He read everything twice before he spoke. "It's solid," he said. "You did well to get collateral. Keep their first payment in a separate account. Do not mix it with your regular funds." He tapped his pen. "And this," he held up the screenshot of my mother's text asking for my numbers. "This goes in a folder marked evidence." "They called me ungrateful," I said. He smiled without humor. "Gratitude is not a currency." For 2 months the payments arrived, checks written in my father's precise hand, smudged where my mother's tears had apparently fallen. I deposited them and sent receipts with the calm of a machine. I did not go to Sunday dinners. I did not answer Lila's calls when she wanted to borrow my punch bowl, my ladder, my patience. In October, the payment didn't come. I gave them 3 days past due, then sent a reminder. My mother called that evening with a voice that could curdle milk. "We had a plumbing emergency," she said. "We'll catch up next month." "You agreed to pay on the 1st, I said. "You agreed to be our daughter," she snapped. "We're senior citizens." "So am I," I said, "and I am not your bank." She hung up. The next morning, I drove past the coffee shop and saw my father's red truck gleaming in the lot. I gave them a week. On the 8th day, I filed a notice of default. Mr. Klein drafted a letter so dry it could start a brush fire. I sent it certified mail and, for good measure, stuck a copy to their front door with blue painter's tape, the way my father used to post chore lists for us on Saturday mornings. My father came to my house that night. He didn't knock hard. He tapped, like an old neighbor. I opened the door and he stood on my porch with his hat in his hands. "You're really going to take my truck?" he asked, and for a second I saw the man who taught me to ride a bike by running behind me, laughing. "You are really going to ignore a signed agreement?" I asked back. "We had a leak," he said. "We had to pay the plumber." "You could have called me," I said. "You could have told me. You chose silence." He looked down. Your mother was embarrassed. "So am I." He shuffled. "Give me until the 15th, he said. "I'll make it right." "On the 15th, I said, "I call the sheriff." He lifted his chin. "You would humiliate us like that?" "You humiliated me when you took what wasn't yours and called it love." He left without saying goodbye. I closed the door and leaned my forehead against it. Mia came to the hallway in princess pajamas and put a hand on my knee. "You're not mean," she said, as if answering a question I hadn't asked aloud. On the 15th, no payment came. On the 16th, Deputy Morales rang my bell. He was 50-something, with a patient face that said he'd seen every flavor of foolishness and most of it before breakfast. You want to proceed? He asked, flipping through the papers I'd given him. The promissory note, the default letter, the ledger of payments received and missed. Yes, I said. We'll be respectful, he said. We'll ask him to hand over the keys. If he refuses, we tow. You don't have to be there. I'll be there, I said. I want to see this through. We met in the coffee shop lot. My father was already there, arms folded, jaw set. My mother stood a few paces behind him, lips pooled into a dramatic O. The truck glowed like something holy in the morning light. Morales greeted them politely. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, he said, we're here to enforce a lawful lien. Over a misunderstanding, my mother said. It's not a misunderstanding, I said. It's math. My father looked at me with a kind of pleading I had never seen. It's my truck. It's my money, I said, and you agreed. He didn't hand over the keys until the tow truck's chains clinked against the asphalt. When he finally placed them in my palm, his fingers were shaking. For half a second, my throat closed. Then I thought of the ballroom, the charge, the pearls at my mother's throat. Morales nodded to the driver. The truck rolled forward, and my mother made a sound like a torn dress. I sold the Ford to a collector 2 towns over for nearly what my father had paid to restore it. I used the money to clear the card, every penny, then opened a small college fund in Mia's name with what was left. I sent my parents the receipt. I did not include a note. The family backlash came in waves, frothy and predictable. My aunt called to say I had shamed my elders. My cousin texted that family is messy and money is just paper. Lila wrote a Facebook post about betrayal that got more likes than her wedding photos. I did not answer anyone. I weeded my garden until my hands ached. I baked bread and gave loaves to neighbors. I watched Mia chase butterflies. I slept like a woman who had returned a stolen item to its rightful shelf. Then the second shoe dropped. A letter arrived from a store I'd never visited, thanking me for opening a line of credit and reminding me my first payment was due. I sat very still at my kitchen table and read it twice. The second page listed a purchase, a diamond bracelet for $3,100. My stomach turned cold in a way that felt familiar and infuriating. I called the number. The representative, a man named Clark with the careful diction of someone paid to be calm, confirmed that the account had been opened in person with an ID, a social security number, and a phone number that was mine, but transposed on one digit. We photocopied the ID, he said. Would you like us to send it to you? Please, I said, and when the scanned image arrived, my coffee went cold in my hand. It was my driver's license. Only it wasn't. The picture was years old, lifted from God knows where. The address was right. The signature was close. The birth date was mine. The edges looked rough, as if some amateur had cut and glued and printed with a prayer. I sent the document to Mr. Klein. He called within an hour. You need to file a police report, he said, and a fraud alert with the credit bureaus. Today. At the precinct, Detective Rowan, 60 with tired eyes and a gentle mouth, took my statement. He had ink stains on his fingers and a wedding ring that had been resized a few times. Family? He asked when I told him who I suspected. Yes, I said. We had a situation recently, I summarized. His eyebrows went up once, but he didn't interrupt. Identity theft is a crime, he said when I finished. I'm not telling you how to feel about your family. I'm telling you you're a citizen with rights. I don't want them in handcuffs, I said. I want them to stop. Sometimes those are the same path, he said. I set the fraud alert. I locked down every account I had, and 3 I'd forgotten existed. I called Mia's mother, my daughter, Jess, and told her to freeze Mia's credit too. Mom, Jess said, voice thick, what is wrong with them? They believe love exempts them from the rules, I said. 2 days later, Lila came to my door. She did not look like a bride anymore. She looked like a person who had misread a map and taken everyone on a detour. I didn't know about the bracelet, she said without preamble. Mom did that. She glanced at my living room as if the walls might be listening. She said she needed something for the rehearsal dinner. She said she'd return it. You signed for the venue, I said. You knew the card. I thought she had your permission. She said, she stopped, shaking her head. It doesn't matter what she said. I'm not a child. No, I said. You're not. She sank onto my sofa like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Matt is furious, she said. He didn't know about any of it. He thought your card was the family card. He thought you were... She sagged further. It doesn't matter what he thought. What do you want, Lila? I want you to tell the police not to arrest Mom. I haven't asked them to, I said. Yet. She rubbed her face. We can fix this. We can return the bracelet. We can... Her voice broke. We can't fix Dad's truck. That's already paid, I said. She looked up at me with a sharpness I recognized from our childhood fights. You enjoyed that, she said. Don't lie. I enjoyed the feeling of not being robbed, I said. That's all. We sat in a quiet that wasn't gentle. At the end of it, she stood. If you press charges, she said, they will never forgive you. If I don't, I said, they will never stop. I gave my parents a choice. I asked for a meeting at Mr. Klein's office. They arrived wearing their Sunday best, as if the clothes could make the conversation behave. Mr. Klein, with his plaid tie and sly kindness, outlined the situation. The fake ID, the store account, the bracelet. He slid the scanned documents across the table. My mother glanced once and then stared hard at the window, as if resolve could erase the shape of her own actions. You need to return the bracelet, Mr. Klein said. You need to repay any charges with interest, and you need to sign this. He tapped a new document, agreeing that you will not open any account, make any purchase, or sign any contract in your daughter's name, with or without her consent, ever again. Violation will result in immediate legal action. My father's mouth pinched. You make us sound like criminals. Mr. Klein looked over his glasses. You used her identity to secure credit. That is a crime. We didn't mean, my mother began. You meant to take, I said. That's enough. She inhaled sharply, a wounded animal breath, and for the first time, I felt something other than anger. I felt the weight of our whole history pressing down, the way she budgeted love, the way he measured kindness, the way I learned to make myself small and useful. I thought of Mia and the map I wanted to hand her someday. It did not include directions to anyone's ledger. They signed. They returned the bracelet. The store confirmed the account had been closed and the charges reversed. Detective Rowan filed the report and kept it in a drawer with a rubber band around it. If they keep their word, he said, this can sleep here. For a while it slept. Winter came. I took up water aerobics with a group of women who told the truth in a way that felt like rescue. I hosted Wednesday soup nights for Jess and Mia and anyone who needed a bowl. I ignored the ringing in my head that sounded like my mother's voice perched on the phrase, ungrateful. In February, at a family birthday dinner, my father tapped his glass for attention. We're making changes, he announced. We've put the house in a trust. My mother smiled with tight pride. So nobody can take it from us. It took me a beat to understand who nobody was in their sentence. Then I saw it, the rewrite. In the story they were telling themselves, I had not protected myself. I had attacked them. What kind of trust? I asked. Don't be nosy, my mother said. It's private. Revocable? I said. Irrevocable? I looked at my father. Who's the trustee? Not you, he said with the satisfaction of a child sticking out his tongue. I sipped my water and did not press. I went home and wrote a letter to myself. You have done enough. You are allowed to stop. But the thing about boundaries is that some people treat them like puzzles to solve. In March, a charge pinged on a card I hadn't used in a year. $99 to a genealogy site, $47 to a flower delivery, $1,200 at an electronics store in a town my parents like to visit on weekends. I called the bank. This card is dead, I said. Someone resurrected it, the representative said. Do you know a Margaret Hayes? My mother's legal name. I closed my eyes. Yes, I said. I do. I drove to my parents' house in the rain. Water made rivulets down their picture window like the house was weeping. My mother opened the door in her good sweater and a face set to innocent. Don't start, she said. We had to buy a new computer. Your father's was from the Stone Age. You had to use my card? The trust account isn't set up for online purchases yet. She waved a hand. It was easier for you, I said. Not for the woman whose fraud department calls so often she's on a first-name basis with the hold music. My father appeared behind her. It's done, he said. Let it go. No, I said. I won't. He bristled. What are you going to do? Call the police on your mother? If she steals again, I said, looking at my mother, yes. Don't be dramatic, she said, then added, eyes narrowed, you wouldn't. I will, I said. Try me. I left before my voice could shake. In the car, I sat with my hands on the steering wheel and counted my breaths until they cooperated again. Then I called Detective Rowan. It's happening again, I said. This time, there were no meetings with Mr. Klein. There were forms and a court date. My mother was charged with identity theft and fraud, misdemeanor counts because of the amounts and because of the judge's mercy. She arrived at arraignment in a camel coat and pearls, the costume of good women. My father glared at me across the aisle. Lila didn't come. In the hallway afterward, my mother looked at me as if I were a stranger who had bumped her shoulder. You've broken this family, she said. You broke it, I said quietly, when you taught us that love owes and owes and owes. The case moved quickly as these things go. My mother took a plea. She did community service shelving books at the library and paid restitution to the card companies. My father punished me with silence that roared in its own register. Neighbors looked at me like I had reported the weather to the police and gotten Rain arrested. I went to water aerobics. I needed bread. I watched Mia build a fort out of blankets and say, "No adults allowed." And I respected the sign. In May, Lila came again. She stood on my porch with a box in her arms. Mom asked me to bring these, she said. Inside were the pearls, the bracelet, a stack of letters tied with blue ribbon. At the bottom, wrapped in tissue, was a receipt for a deposit from 25 years ago. A check made out to my parents from me when I was 43 and they were in danger of losing the house. I had forgotten the exact number. They hadn't. Lila looked around my kitchen like a person searching for evidence of a life she might have had if she had made different choices. Matt and I are separating, she said. He says I married him to get out from under Mom. I think I married him because I believed someone else could fix me. She laughed, a small and not unkind sound. He can't. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. She set the pearls on the table. Mom wants you to sell these, she said. She says you've always wanted them anyway. I don't, I said. They're just beads. She wants you to see them as payment. Lila's face crumpled for a second, then reformed. She wants to be done with the ledger by picking what counts. I nodded. That tracks. Lila touched the ribbon on the letters. These are from Dad to Mom when he was in basic training, she said. I read one. He was tender. She looked at me. He used to be tender. We all did, I said, and we stood for a minute in the kitchen of the woman who had become something else. Do you hate me? She asked, sudden as a storm. No, I said. I hate what we were taught. Me too, she said. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand like a kid. I'm going to Al-Anon, she added, then grimaced. The people are kind. It's for families of addicts. I know Mom isn't drinking, but she's addicted to something. Control, I said, and rescue. And drama, Lila said, and she says she's bored without it. Then let's bore her. We didn't reconcile overnight. Movies fast forward through the slow parts. Life makes you live them. But Lila began to pay me back in small squares. 100 here, 50 there, plus a card with a drawing by Mia taped to it. She brought over a bookshelf she didn't need and assembled it while I chopped onions. She asked in late June if she could come to water aerobics with me, and the answer was yes. My father came around the day he fell on the sidewalk outside the coffee shop. The call came from a number I didn't recognize. He's fine, the barista said, breathless, but he's shaken. The hospital said the same. I brought him home in my car, while my mother fussed in the back seat like a bird trapped indoors. In the kitchen, I gave him tea. He held the mug like he was praying into it. Thank you, he said. You're welcome. He looked at his hands. I'm sorry, he said, and the words startled him too. I don't know how to be a father without keeping score. You could try, I said. Start with 0. He nodded once, a jerky motion, and sipped. He didn't apologize for the truck. He didn't mention the court. But he came to Mia's school play in July and sat beside me in a plastic chair as if it was the most natural thing in the world. My mother, for her part, stayed angry. She took to saying, well, she has her money, in social situations the way other people say, nice weather. At the grocery store, she lingered near me at the apples and spoke loudly about betrayal. I learned to treat her as if she were a thundercloud whose path I could not control. Some days she reigned, some days she passed. At summer's end, the venue manager, Victor, called. You asked me to be honest if anyone asked who authorized payment, he said. I've been asked. By who? The district attorney. It turned out my mother had filed a complaint against the venue for fraudulently charging my card. Victor told the truth. The DA's office opened a file and, when they called me, I sat on my porch with a breeze in my hair and said the same truth Victor had said. My mother had used my card. My sister had signed the contracts. I had not authorized any of it. Nothing came of it, because what could? But the call shook my last doubt loose. The ledger would never close itself. It would simply add columns and then blame the balance on whoever tried to do the math. I wrote one more letter. Not to myself this time, but to my parents. It was 3 paragraphs long. I love you. I am not your bank. I will no longer be present for any conversation about what I owe you or what you deserve from me. If you need emergency help with health or safety, call 911 or call Jess. This is not punishment. It is a boundary. If you want to see me, we will meet in a public place for coffee for 1 hour. If you bring the ledger, I will leave. I signed it and mailed it and kept a copy in a folder labeled Peace. People think revenge is a spectacle, a flaming car, a locked door, a speech. Sometimes it is a letter that fits in an envelope and a refusal to carry a weight that was never yours. Sometimes it is watching the tow truck take what a promise forfeited. Sometimes it is telling the truth so quietly it sounds like prayer. In October, on a Saturday so bright it hurt, Maya and I planted daffodils. She wore a floppy hat and mispronounced horticulture like a spell. When we finished, We sat on the steps and ate peanut butter sandwiches. "Mom says Grandma is mad at you," she said, matter of fact. "Grandma is mad at herself," I said. "It looks the same from the outside." "Will she stop?" Mia asked. "Eventually," I said, "or I will." That winter, my mother sent a Christmas card with a picture of her and my father at a diner, steam rising from their coffee like ghost speech. Inside, in her tight script, she wrote, "We forgive you." I laughed, a sound that felt more like air leaving than joy. I didn't reply. Lila spent the holiday with me and Jess and Mia. We cooked too much and fell asleep in front of an old movie. In the morning, there were not enough batteries and too much love, which is exactly the ratio a house needs. The last twist, when it came, was quiet. In March, a letter arrived from the bank where my parents had set up their trust. It was addressed to me as successor trustee in the event that the current trustees were incapacitated. I called the number confused. A woman named Sandy put me on hold, then came back with a controlled fluster. "I'm so sorry," she said. "Like there's been a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" She hesitated. "Your mother named you as successor last month. Your father signed too." "I don't want it," I said. "Remove me." Sandy cleared her throat. "Your mother insisted. She said you were the only responsible one." I laughed a little helplessly. The ledger had rotated again. Now I was useful. Now I was responsible. Now I was the insurance policy. "Remove me," I repeated. "Please." Sandy complied. She sent new forms. I signed nothing. I told no one. I put the letter in the peace folder on top of the boundary note and shut the drawer with a click that felt ceremonial. In April, my father came to Mia's school for Grandparents' Day. He stood in the hallway holding a paper sunflower she'd made him and looked every hour of his age. My mother did not come. He kissed Mia's hair, patted my arm, and said nothing about money or betrayal or trucks. We sat in small chairs and drank juice from cups so tiny it felt like a joke. When I drove him home, he tapped the dash once, the way he used to do, as if blessing us. "Thank you," he said, and I believed he meant more than the ride. On the anniversary of the wedding, I took Mia for ice cream. We walked past the venue and peered in at a different couple dancing under the same chandelier. I did not think of invoices or signatures. I thought of Paul slipping a 20 into my pocket, and in the way that simple, silly ritual had made me feel seen. I reached into my bag and found a 5 and handed it to Mia. "For your good mood," I said. She beamed. "Can I tip the band?" "They'll appreciate it," I said. We stood on the sidewalk while she handed the bill to a teenager with a guitar who grinned like someone had handed him permission. That's all I wanted in the end. Permission to stop caring what wasn't mine. Permission to love people from the safe side of a boundary. Permission to remember generosity is a gift, not a tithe. When the daffodils bloomed, yellow and laughing, I took a picture and sent it to no one. I printed it and put it on my fridge. I labeled it with the date and the words paid in full. Months later, a cousin stopped me at the farmer's market. "Are you and your parents speaking?" she asked, loaded like a question in a movie. "We are careful," I said. "We are not cruel. People say you went too far." "People aren't my bank," I said, and bought tomatoes. The story spread the way stories do. In some versions, I'm a villain with a tow truck on speed dial. In others, I'm a saint who saved myself. In my version, I'm a woman who learned late, but not too late, the difference between help and harm. In my version, I choose my granddaughter's college fund over a vintage Ford. I choose Wednesdays with soup over Sundays with ledgers. I choose to plant daffodils and let the people who prefer asphalt call me ungrateful as their heels click away. Sometimes I pass the coffee shop and see a different red truck parked where my father used to sit and speak politics with men who nod in unison. Sometimes I see my mother in the grocery aisle, reading labels like they might confess. Sometimes Lila and I build a bookshelf and it leans, and we laugh so hard we have to sit down and fan ourselves with instruction manuals. Life did not turn cinematic to reward me. It thickened into something I can chew. The ledger still calls to me some nights, a lullaby of debts and proofs. I get up, I make tea, I take the piece folder out and run my fingers over the edges of paper that save me from myself. Then I put it away and go back to bed, where the girl with grass-stained knees sometimes sneaks in and steals the blanket, and my heart goes on beating like something honest. That's the thing about revenge when you do it right. It stops being about them faster than you expect. It becomes a blueprint for the house you actually want to live in. And once you've moved in, you don't keep your suitcase by the door anymore. You hang your coat. You put on water for tea. You stay.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting